ignore that big target, ignore the big thing. Think about one simple thing you can do that you would enjoy doing, and that would give you a buzz. And that could be something really easy like reviewing like an update you need to send to a donor, or thinking about what kind of engagement piece you could do next with someone. But just make it really simple and really easy. And then I bet as soon as you've done it, you will feel fantastic. You'll just get such a buzz from what you're doing.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you. So I've noticed in the chat, I'm not the only person who's newly back from maternity leave. So salute all of us. Hannah is not long back from maternity leave either. I am literally, I think it's week 3 back from maternity leave. So all of us who are back from maternity leave and managing all of that, salute from a very personal point of view. And just trying to get our heads back in the game. What would you say are some really important places people should be looking for news, info, interesting stuff in the sector that they might have zoned out of quite rightly because they weren't at work for the last little while?
Oh my goodness. I would say that nowadays LinkedIn is a really, really good option. Loads of people are posting easy, short, sharp piece of content that just, get your head back into the game, or like we were talking before, the motivational piece that just give you kind of that spark and idea that might help. I will put my hands up and say I have to put a limit on that, because I feel I could scroll forever and fall down the hole, and that kind of takes me away from what I need to do. But honestly, I'd say LinkedIn is a really key one. What about you, Beth? What have you tried doing since you've been back?
So I am a long-standing advocate for the Lark Owl newsletter. So she does a free newsletter, but she also has a paid-for subscription. I do get the paid-for subscription. And this week for paid-for subscribers, really interesting because I think it sits across major donor and trust, was around her top 10 tips for how to approach those no unsolicited application trusts. And some of that stuff for me has started to spark, how do I do that for some of the colder donors on the list with the client I'm working with. And next week she's going to do some more. So definitely Lark Owl, and totally worth the annual subscription. And the other one I've literally just subscribed to, and again, I've only just subscribed because I normally follow her on LinkedIn, Hannah, is Michelle Stein. So she also has this 321 newsletter, which I think might be fortnightly. And I've just had my first one this week. So it really popped into my head that they're too. You're right, you can scroll too much and you can sign up to too many newsletters, and obviously you're all signed up to ours and it's also brilliant. But those 2 additional ones have added real value to my thought process this week. And I think, again, I guess it depends whether you're just trust, just major donors, or you're a combination. And I think increasingly people are doing a combination. There's a lot of stuff going on, particularly in the trust world at the moment. There's a lot of chat about change there. So it's probably worth, and I think that has got implications for major donors. I think it's got implications because some donors give through trusts. Some will be listening to those advisors who also advise trusts. And if the way they're advising is changing, it might change the way they advise philanthropists. And that sort of the pressure to add relationships to trusts is getting more and more and more. So I think it's worth, whether you sit on one side or the other, knowing what's going on the other side of high value at the moment. So trying to wrap your head around what's happening, what's changing, why that might be happening, although no one really knows for sure. Those would be my top tips. Really keen to answer anybody's questions for today. Absolutely no pressure to ask any, but if you do have questions, please do step in. Otherwise, Hannah and I are going to keep chatting, which hopefully will be valuable to you. So I'm just going to keep checking in on the chat, and otherwise I've got one more question for you, Hannah, that got asked before. Where is it? I've lost my thing now. Prospecting. There is a more specific question than that, but just like kind of large topic. Obviously there are lots of ways we can do prospecting in terms of major donors, but say the strategy is around networking. So you either have done well screening and it hasn't worked, or your organisation isn't keen on well screening, but you've got a few major donors and you keep hearing people like me say, do you know what, ask those and get them to open their address books and all this bit. So you have this great conversation, you feel you've got a rapport, you go, you know, do you know anyone else who might consider supporting our organisation? They go, no. Where do you go with that? I'm going to leave you to answer that while I answer some of the chat questions. So where do you go if people are just not very helpful and not very forthcoming?
Oh, so do you know what? I always think that's the most heartbreaking thing, isn't it? You've done all that hard work, you've engaged them, you've kind of prepared yourself, you've got to that meeting, and then you ask that crucial question, you know, who else do you know that could support us? You know, could you help us widen our network? And they go, I can't think of anyone. And I would say, if you were to rewind time before you get to that meeting, a really important thing is to do that research around that person. So almost prepare and think, who could they know? So really look into their network. So what boards do they already sit on? Are they a trustee of a certain charitable organisation? What's their role in their company? Who's on the board? Who do they and who are publicly they mixing with? And then I would kind of prepare yourself to go to that meeting with those names, knowing that when you ask that question, or is there anybody that you know, you either have those names to hand, or you could say something like, do you know what, I'm really keen to reach out to Mr. XYZ. Do you happen to know him through ABC? And you'll be surprised how quickly, once you mention a name or an organisation or something they're already involved with, they suddenly go, oh, yes, I do know them. I don't know them. And if it's a don't know them, it's a, you know, do you know how we might be able to reach them? And people love offering advice and help. So, you know, often they'll help you to get to that person. But I would say really important, do just that extra little bit of work of knowing who could be in their zone of influence and kind of go into that meeting ready with that information. What would you say, Beth?
So I totally agree. I think where I've done that before and I've just been like, can you help me with anyone? It's too big a question and it's too scary. And people are desperate to help, and they have been some of the most frustrating calls because I've ended up in the, well, we could do a sponsored walk, and have you tried Give As You Live, and I understand Amazon do a thing, and you can get Google ad grants and all of this stuff, which is like it's good that charities know that stuff, don't get me wrong, it's really useful to know about. All of those things are useful routes to market, but they are totally not the question I asked and not the answers I was looking for. And I think that I've learned over the years to ask a much more specific closed off question, like, can you introduce me to so and so, or I think you worked here at the same time, is there any way you can help me with a route to so and so, even if you don't think they know them themselves? I also would say start with only asking one person that stuff. Don't ask 10 trustees or 10 people that, because God, if you end up with loads of people who are interested in helping, you're going to end up overwhelmed with stuff. Because what you need to do to make it work is get one person to introduce you to one person and prove that you can be trusted with that relationship, and then ask them to introduce you to 3 people, and then ask them to introduce you to 10 people, and then ask the second person, go, see, I did it really well with Steve, I'd love to replicate that with you, Sandra. And just prove your value at every little step, so that they open up a little bit more and more and more. And you can only do that really well if you just start really small, which feels a bit frustrating when you've got targets to hit. But I think doing that is really important. And I would also say it's absolutely okay that not all of your trustees are going to be interested. Like, it's genuinely fine. You are going to have a trustee who is interested in cause. You might even have beneficiaries and service users and lived experience people on your board who may or may not be well connected. It's absolutely okay if the value on the trustee board isn't all about connections. We aren't America, and we are okay with that. Some people will be great at governance, some legal, some finance stuff, and maybe they're well connected, and also maybe they're not, and that's absolutely fine to not have an entire trustee board going out there. You know, you want 1 or 2 really well connected people ideally, and the next time you're doing a trustee recruitment, try and get whoever's in charge of that to think that through and think about well connected people. But it's okay that it's not everyone, or even most.
And you're right, you've picked up on a really important point there, Beth, is I've always found that when building like a prospect pipeline, or when you're looking for prospects, it's really key to make sure that you work really well with that person that you're engaging with. So really treasure that relationship. So it might be that you start out and you only have 2 or 3 really warm supporters or donors or trustees who are able to help you build that kind of warm pipeline. And I'd say really treasure those people in that relationship, like get to know them, like understand first and foremost why they support your organization, what motivates them, what keeps them, coming back, or keep making donations, and make them feel valued. Because I think, it's human nature, isn't it? We never want people to feel like they're extracting things from us. We want it to be a two-way mutual beneficial relationship. And so kind of treat them with that respect that they deserve. And you'll find when you start working with, supporters like that, once they trust you and you've done it really well with them, they just open up doors that, you would never have got through as a fundraiser alone, because, that kudos and that peer endorsement is so valuable.
So let's drill down about making them feel valued. Can you give me some specific examples of things you've done to make people feel valued that have worked in terms of relationships? I think that practical ideas can be a really tricky thing sometimes.
Yeah, so one that I think probably is up there for a little bit of a gold star is being able to take your supporter to see your work or to bring it to life in person. Now, that's not always possible with every organisation, but for the ones where it is, I think you see so many times like this light bulb moment that goes off with the person you take, and you see how much they value that opportunity and how much they enjoy it. I'd also say, from a fundraiser's point of view, if you're able to go to meet, where the money is spent, and you meet the beneficiaries or you meet the staff, it is like one of the best things, isn't it, Beth? Because you get buoyed up. And going back to motivations, it reminds you why we do the job, why invest this time, why, some of the tougher parts are worth doing. So I'd probably say, if you can get the opportunity, I'd say a visit that isn't too onerous on the staff that deliver the service, and it's safe, obviously, to do so, is brilliant. It's really well worth it. Other than that, you can't always take your beneficiaries to the project they support. So, for example, I've worked at international development charities. You can't put every donor on a plane and take them over to see the project that they're funding. So when it comes to that kind of thing, you need to think really creatively around how you can almost bring the project to them. So things like, there is one organisation where they used to do a welcome card. So the people that were being supported by the charity, they used to design cards, and for each donor that gave a significant gift, they would actually get a thank you card made by the beneficiaries. And it was just part of what they were already doing, but they wanted to kind of show their thanks. Photos are always really, really good as well. If you've got permission to send a photo. I think if, for example, the donor can't get to the project, because that can happen, because, logistics are quite challenging, even if it's a UK-based thing. Embracing things like WhatsApp, as long as you've got the full permissions to do that, with the donor and the organisation. Sometimes if you're able to get there and to share a photo via, social media, that also can be really powerful and really simple way of bringing their support to life.
Yeah, I love the idea. I think in terms of individual giving, especially for the really advanced programs, there's often a welcome pack, right? That's something that I hear IG teams talk about a lot. A new donor signs up to regular gift, and so we send them the welcome pack. And I think that because we are all about the bespoke in high value, we don't have that. And I do wonder if that's a more fluid version of a bunch of things we could pull together would be helpful when someone new comes on board. So that we've got like a standard way of making them feel like they're really valued. That's more, and obviously a thank you letter from the chief exec or whoever is super useful. And that seniority can lend itself to people feeling like they're being taken seriously, but something that's more wraparound and warm and friendly, I think, as well, can be really helpful. So again, I'm just going to pause for a second. Has anyone got any questions? Has anyone got anything they want to ask? Any help they need with stuff with? You're welcome to write it in the chat or be brave and put your hand up or just unmute and say, hi, I've got a question if you want to. Otherwise, we're going to keep chatting. So don't worry about that. Hannah. Kickstarting. Oh, Maeve. Hello, Maeve. You got your hands up there first. Unmute yourself, Maeve, and come and ask your question. Hi.
I'm off mute. I was just wondering about the point that you guys made about how you can't always bring every donor to the project, even though we would love to do that, and the kind of creative thinking to go around that. And just what some of your kind of suggestions, most creative ideas would be, particularly if you're working off like a very limited budget, because obviously things like video content can be amazing, but to get professional video made can be a bit of a challenge and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I can also challenge that by the fact that, we always, professional video content is amazing. But if you can't do it, sometimes a budget filmed video is just as good. Like if you, our phones do really good videos these days, don't they? And if you can do a little bit on video, that can also go a long way. Sometimes donors don't want the big and shiny, like finished article. Sometimes they like to see something that is just more natural and more personable. And they know then that you've not spent loads of time on it, that the organisation's not spent lots of money on it, which again is something that can be a concern for donors. Otherwise, if you need to get creative, I think one of the best ways is really think about your organisation and think about what really matters. So the example I used before, so the donors, so the beneficiaries used to write a thank you card or send a thank you card that they had designed. And the idea was these ladies were moving into their new homes, which were funded by donors. And so it was almost like them sending to their donor like a new home, welcome to a new home card, which was a nice little exchange. So things like that. Think about, do you have, like I said, do you have photos that you could share? Or even something that I used to do if you're really struggling, like a piece to camera yourself to your donors. So we like to send paper or PDF updates, but sometimes that isn't possible. Like even just doing a short piece to camera to kind of present the work, the latest update, that can be a really nice personal way where you maybe can't get an in-person meeting with your donor to kind of get them excited and bring them in. What about you, Beth? Have you got anything else to suggest or add?
So going back to the whole video thing, something I've done recently is I ended up doing a piece that was half to camera and half presentation, and I recorded it myself on Teams. I think my Teams is now playing up. Sorry, I look like I was there. So yeah, so I recorded myself on Teams.
Pop master into our source. Yeah.
I'm going to wait until that's all caught up. Sorry, guys. That's gone really weird for me.
It's all right. You're back on with us.
I'm back on. Okay, right. Yeah. So I recorded a piece on Teams, just me recording, did a couple of presentation slides, but mainly it was me to camera, and then whacked it into Canva and did some very quick and dirty, like I'm not good at this, and maybe you work for a big organisation with your comms team can help you and maybe you don't, and just sent that, and got a really good response because it was someone I happened to know. I'd heard the feedback from this donor that they just didn't have the time to read stuff and that they were feeling a bit tired by the end of the day, lots of paper, too much, even like printing it out, A, waste of money, B just like never going to get around to it. And it was what I would have loved to have done, and I didn't have consent to do it, and the organisation wasn't keen on it, and also I didn't want to give them my phone number, was a voice note on WhatsApp. That's what I was trying to replicate, was basically all my mates who can't be asked to text anymore, who just whack a voice note on WhatsApp to me, like a 1-minute update that's really informal, and trying to think about that. So what are the different ways we interact with our friends and how can that work, which hopefully helps a bit. Tyrone, you've been very patient and had your hand up for ages. How can we help you?
Oh no, thank you. So just to kind of give more context on kind of my question. So I'm new to philanthropy. Thank you for the quick conversation we had earlier on LinkedIn, by the way, Hannah. I really do appreciate your insight there. But I'm new within philanthropy, and I've been hired to create a complete brand new pipeline for the Way Youth Zone, which is a youth club that I work at. With this, the idea from my manager is that to get kind of first people donating and the major like donations, we should probably start them around Christmas time with the big give. We're trying to take part in that, which is 20k with match funding. So I had a meeting with her yesterday around that, and looking at kind of the prospects that I've had meetings, ran events with the young people, come dine with me, talent shows, etc. I've got them all like in a list of like, I suspect they'll donate 500. I'll suspect that they'll donate 1,000. But in my head, it's like, okay, I've got pretty much 2 months until Christmas now. What would be your best advice to re-engage those people, potentially add more people to that list? And then how would I drop the ask for them to give on Christmas, would you say?
Well, that's a very big question, Tyrone. So how many people roughly have you already got on your list?
About 12. Around
Don't
12,
add any
13.
more. If you're talking about asks between now and Christmas, that's probably enough.
Okay.
Don't add any more. And how have you ascertained how much you reckon they could afford to give? Is it based on previous giving?
Yeah, so based on previous giving, their net worth approximation, kind of the work that they've done, just general research there really.
Yeah. And what, like, think of one of them specifically, because this is too big, but like, how long ago did this person last give?
To us, none of them have given before.
So none of them have given to you guys before. So how have you got their data?
So through research. So for example, one of them that pops into my head, his name is Keith Fraser. He used to be the superintendent for Wolverhampton. He runs the Youth Justice Council as well. So he's on the list. He's managed to come down. He's got a meeting with some of our board members. I've just kind of looked at kind of his net worth based on kind of his company's house, looked at kind of his giving potential, his kind of connectedness to Wolverhampton, and then just kind of guesstimated that I can probably try and get between 200 from him for the big give. So that's kind of how I got to my prices, really.
Okay, fair enough. So I think if you want to do it really quickly, you're probably not going to maximize your gift value. So take the ones that are already engaged and start with them. So your Keith is the great person if he's already come to meet. And I think you need to have a meeting with him and explain that you need to raise X amount of money by Y date to meet this match funding target and what that's going to go to, and just directly say, would you be able to contribute towards that, please? And then if he says how much, say, how much can you afford to give? We're hoping, because you don't know, right? So don't ask him for 200 quid. Because he might be able to afford 1,000 or 5,000, Tyrone. And if you ask him for 200 quid, he'll never give you more.
Yeah.
But, you know, try and push it back to him to make him give you an amount. If you say you've got to raise 20 grand in order to reach your match funding, he'll have a percentage of that in his head and see what he can afford to give. The worst thing he can say is, no, I can't afford anything. Right. In which case you just keep him on track and go, I really appreciate your answer. Thank you. Whatever his answer, always say thank you next. Even if he says no, say thank you, because you're thanking him for considering supporting your charity and taking you seriously, right? Thank you. I really appreciate that. Please, can I keep you informed, because I can see you really care and now isn't the right time, but I'd like to keep talking to you about your support, right?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you this because I suspect you're going to get more no's than yeses with 2 months to go to the big give. I'm sorry, it feels like a massive. Someone else has just said it in the chat, like that is big. To go cold and get 20 grand for the big give is big. But I think you've got to pick whoever's the most engaged, go and have a one-to-one, explain how much you need, explain what your deadline is, and say, would you consider financially contributing towards this, please? Pause. Don't say anything. If there is silence, allow the silence to sit.
Okay.
If you feel you need to practice that, and I would say this to everybody on this call, you will all need to practice that. That will feel really icky. I feel itchy. Other people feel sick. I feel it very physically. Would you consider a gift towards this appeal? Like, keep being silent. Like, then just keep. Like, it feels really uncomfortable. Practice it with your friends, make them make funny faces at you, and keep silent. Like, I'm not joking, this sounds weird, but practice not saying anything. So in sales, there's this superstition that the next person who speaks is the one who loses the money. So if the salesman who's trying to make the sale speaks, he loses the sale. If the purchaser is the next one to speak, they lose their money to the salesman. The sale is completed. It's like really important. And if you've got someone else going in, like a head of fundraising, a service delivery person, make them also practice being silent.
Yeah.
Because you're right, Beth, on that,
Yeah.
because because what we do otherwise is we naturally fill that gap, don't we? We naturally want to say, but we'll accept anything because we're thinking of our targets, or if that
Because you
doesn't feel
want to
too
be
uncomfortable.
apologetic, you don't want to be bold. I had it happen. I had a theatre director. I asked for £250,000. 10 seconds in, he went, but obviously, we would accept anything that you would be willing to give. And I got a 100 grand gift. Now I'm really chuffed I got 100 grand. It's still more than that charity had ever given before. But I knew the wife of the donor really well, and she had primed him for 250 grand, and we never ever got it. Like, we could never bring it back from that one worried about silence chit chat, that worried filling the gap that we do when we're nervous, lost me 150 nicker, which I will never forgive him for, obviously.
And that's probably one of the top tips for making an ask, isn't it, Beth?
Yeah.
Is to be really confident when you ask it.
Yeah.
And pause and sit in what feels like the longest wait of your life. But then they will say something. I promise you, they will say something.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 times, that's a really positive thing they're going to say. Maybe even 9.5 times out of 10.
If you go to this Keith and he says, no, I really need an amount of money, Tyrone, and you say, would you consider a gift of £1,000?
Yeah.
The worst that he's going to say is, no, I can't afford that. Right? That's the worst. He's not going to get cross because you think he's richer than he is. Right? No one is getting cross because you think they can afford more. Right? That's not human nature.
They're usually flattered, right, Beth? Aren't they?
Yeah.
You can always see them going, wow.
Literally never happened to me. But obviously, right? Someone came up to me and said, Beth, would you consider a gift of £1,000? I'd actually just laugh, if I'm honest. I'm like, no, actually, I have 2 small children and that cost me a lot of money. But thanks. Maybe one day. But I wouldn't be pissed off. I wouldn't be upset. And also the other big tip I can give all of you is, once they're in that meeting, they know that you need money. Then it's not a silly thing to do to actually ask. And I think, be direct, be friendly, be direct, ask, pause, say thank you, whatever they say, and then have in your head a couple of, well, if they say yes but it's a lesser amount, go thank you very much, can I add gift aid on top of that? How much, literally you're trying to eke out every penny, right? Can I get a gift aid out of that? Can I talk publicly about this gift to help other people? You're the ex-superintendent, Keith, your name goes a long way. Would you also be able to introduce me to some people? Like keep up, once they've said yes, they are then bought into the success of your appeal, Tyrone.
Yeah.
So then you can ask for some subsequent follow-up things. I mean, you've got to read the room. You've got to see the body language. You've been hired as a philanthropy fundraiser, so I assume that that's because you've got some of those core skills, right? So you'll know how to do that stuff. That's just human interaction stuff. Make sure your follow-up afterwards is excellent.
Yeah.
Make sure it's really positive. Make sure you don't forget to tell them how successful you are and keep them in touch with it. And then be in touch within 3 months, I would say, and start building longer, bigger, deeper relationships so that you can be asking for bigger amounts of money.
Okay, perfect. Honestly, you two are actually amazing. That's perfect
Thanks, mate.
advice.
So
Thank you,
before
guys.
Tyrone goes, I just have to tell you something. I've been talking about you, Tyrone.
Have you?
I
What do you
think
mean?
your LinkedIn profile is brilliant. And I have been sharing it with people because I think what Tyrone, could you do me a favour, Tyrone? Could you please share a link to your own LinkedIn profile in the chat for everybody? What Tyrone has done that is brilliant in LinkedIn is that his entire profile is set up to attract philanthropists. It isn't set up to get a job, which is what most of us are trying to do, right? He has got the right branding, and if you look, he's got his headline banner is branded, his about him is branded, and what he talks about is how he can enable philanthropists to support young people in Wolverhampton have a better future. He doesn't talk about raising money, he doesn't talk about being a fundraiser, but if you look all the way down to who he's following at the very bottom, it's all totally congruent. And in this world, and particularly when we talk about trusts and relationship building and attracting people and using things that are free and available, having a profile like Tyrone's is definitely the way to go. And I'm really pleased you're on the call because I've been literally talking about you for 2 weeks. So it's really nice to meet you. And I hope you don't mind. I've been sharing your LinkedIn profile maniacally since you connected with me, like a little stalker.
Yeah, and also just to say as well, because I know Tyrone through LinkedIn, Beth and I, we hadn't had this conversation beforehand. No. It suddenly I thought, oh my God, it sounds like we planted this. But there we go. The power of LinkedIn. Positive feedback. So well done. And I agree with what Beth said. I actually think I liked one of your posts this morning. It's all right. It's good. It is good content. So do check it out. And guys, I would definitely recommend that around LinkedIn. It is so much more than what it probably originally was set up to be. It is, a person-to-person interface. It is your own personal brand, but your organization's brand. It is where, your donors are going to go and look for you, like we go and look for them. So, have it current, make it appealing, really think about what you put on there and how you share it. But it's a great resource. And I hear so many great wins that come through LinkedIn connections. So, go for it. Give it a whirl. Like you can't go wrong. Just have a try.
Yeah. I think that's also true. Yeah. Thanks for being on the call. I really appreciate it.
Sorry.
No, not at all. Vanessa, you've got your hand up waiting very patiently. Please come and join us.
No, hi. I'm the Senior Philanthropy Manager at Help for Heroes, just by way of introduction. But I was just really interested in what you said there about donors knowing why they're there in the room with you. And I was listening to a podcast that was clearly an American philanthropist talking and saying how they go to meetings and with someone like me, and they dislike the fact that the fundraiser's not upfront about what they are going to ask them for at the end. And that I'm from Africa, so I don't have this issue. But basically, I think that, and this is what I'm really asking for your thoughts on, do you think the British are different like that? For example, they were saying that a fundraiser could approach them and say, I really want to talk to you about this project, but at the end of our conversation, I'm going to ask you for some financial support. What do you think about that in terms of the British public and how they view that kind of upfront asking?
Yeah.
It isn't the way I would do it.
No. And I think I think that's where, Beth, you kind of alluded to this earlier about the difference between probably the American philanthropy culture and the British philanthropy culture. I think it's really important whenever you are kind of having a meeting with a supporter, you make it clear why you're going, like so that both of you are making the most of that time together. That person's taking time out of their diary, so you want to be saying, I'm coming because I want to share some insight around the organization, or I want to talk to you about a project that we're delivering that I think you might be interested in supporting. I wouldn't say it was our British style to say at the start of the meeting, at the end of this, I'm going to make you an ask. Because do you know what? Sometimes in that meeting, it's not right to make that ask, especially if it's the first meeting with someone. That is often not the right time to be asking them for
Yeah.
a financial gift. You know, your first meeting, your first couple of interactions about like getting to know them, and for you to understand why they support your organisation and what interests them, and you know, if they are seasoned philanthropists, you know, where do they like to donate their money? How do they like to be recognised? What kind of other organisations are they supporting? So that when it comes to you saying, will you make a X amount, we make a donation of X amount to A, B, and C, you get that amount right, and you get what it is that they're supporting right. And I think that's really, really key. Because often, as much as Beth and I we've been chatting about, you know, the ask and the pause, brilliant. It's all the work that you do in advance of making that question that ensures that that is a successful ask and you get the donation that you hope for.
So I totally agree with what you're saying. What I would say is you shouldn't ever have any donor interaction without a clear purpose. Yeah. So if someone said, well, why do you want this meeting? You should be able to articulate what that is about, but that isn't necessarily about asking for a gift. So I did some management consultancy training years ago now, and this guy, he definitely, it wasn't for our sector, and it works because I can still remember, like 12 years old, what he said. He said, you should always have your poo for your meeting, your POO. And I was like, oh really? Like my children talk about that all the time. But what he meant was your purpose, your objectives, and your desired outcomes, your POO. And in my head, I always have those three things for a team meeting, for a chat with a colleague, for everything. I have in my head, what is my purpose, what is my objective, and what does success look like at the end of this interaction for me? What do I want to get? Because if I'm not clear on that, then what we end up having is idle chit chat. Now, if I've heard one thing in the sector over the years, it is, oh my God, I am so bored of having like endless coffees. Please, can you get to the asking? From donors, and often from chief execs as well. Like, I'm happy to ask, but all I do is have coffees and no one gives. And I'm like, so are you asking? No, you know, and you can ask too soon and you can not ask at all, and they're both equally bad. So you should definitely have a purpose, but you might say, my purpose in this meeting is to update you since your last gift. My purpose is to pick your brains because we need to raise an extra £3 million over the next 2 years to meet our strategy needs. And as someone who's already a donor, I want to learn from you what we're doing well and what we could improve. Now, that is true, and it's slightly disingenuous because you also want to know how you can improve their personal things so that you can get more money from them personally. But it is broadly true, right? So I would say that yes, you should have a purpose and you should be ready to articulate it. Please don't always make your purpose asking for money. Like it is literally the tip of the iceberg. The reason major donor fundraisers have really high success rates is they don't ask until they know it's the right time to ask, and they know it's the right time to ask. And I'm not going to remember this all because I'm rattling it off the top of my head, but when they know how much to ask for, what part of the organisation this person wants to fund, who helps them make their philanthropy decisions from their side, who from our side, from the organisation side, needs to be there to help them understand and feel valued enough, and it's the right location and it's the right time. You need to know all of that stuff and probably some other bits that I've forgotten as well before you ask, right? And you find those things out by having all of those conversations and by making sure that you're moving forward on that checklist. That's how you stop having idle chit chat that never goes anywhere.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing the American perspective, Vanessa, because I think it is really valuable. And some of us will be working with international customers and clients and donors, whatever we want to call them. And we should be aware that there is a really big cultural difference. So when you are approaching an American donor, if you're sure they're from the US, so Canadian American donors, as in American landmass donors, are different again from US American donors. So you need to be really clear where they're from.
Yeah, no, the question then, I mean, I would never do what you've just, described, which is just go in and ask for money. It's always about a curiosity conversation first and, building up to it. So, but it was interesting as to whether you think donors in this country or prospective donors would appreciate that, because
No.
that it's okay, cool, thanks.
No, and all the ones I've ever interviewed have never said, do you know what I really want is for people to be upfront about asking. They've normally said, like, I would like them to ask more. We go through the process and I appreciate getting to know, but then they never ask. Or they say, holy mother of God, they asked me for £1 million the first time they met me. That was awful. Like, I get the extremes. I've never, when a donor's had a great interaction that I would describe as textbook, had anything other than positive feedback on that from people.
Great, thanks a lot.
You are welcome. That's been a really useful chat. So really interesting, Tyrone. I don't know if you were on the call earlier when I was recommending Michelle Stone's newsletter. She also does do a lot of work on LinkedIn, and she has a whole like training program on LinkedIn. So Tyrone's saying that his profile is thanks to her, and I would say she's really like the leading proponent of LinkedIn for philanthropy, and she's definitely worth following. And great that Tyrone's a great case study for that, because I've got a lot of time for Michelle. I think she's brilliant.
And also Beth, she's a really good one for an international perspective as well.
Yeah,
she's of South African heritage. She does a lot of work in the I'm going to call it the global south, but please correct me if I'm wrong. She's got a great kind of broadness to her. So yeah, do check her out on LinkedIn for getting that global perspective with your donors.
Great. So if anyone else has any more questions, please do like jump in, write it in the chat, whatever. There was a comment earlier, Esther said something really useful that I just want to share for those who can't read the chat and for the purpose of the recording. When we were talking about interacting and visiting our beneficiary locations, if at all possible, that kind of like in-person immersion is really useful. Esther got something useful to add, which is that she's offered donors the opportunity to chat with program officers, so not always the management but the people who are on the ground delivering, right? And they've really liked getting that on the ground update. Works well for projects abroad. And I worked with an international development charity years ago now, and because all their staff in the countries they were working in had smartphones, suddenly they got them to do these 30-second 1-minute pieces to camera and emailed them across or sent them across the UK, which then all got stitched together as really authentic, real stuff. So your program officer's doing it once and it might go out to 30-40 donors. So that worked really well and was totally low cost. And they just, I happen to know, even though they're massive international development charity, they sat there editing it on their phones, which was really sweet. But you know, that was the best use of their time as fundraisers, because it got these videos out to their top 30-40 donors. Esther also says, in the process of arranging a call for our donor with one of our project participants abroad. So well done you, Esther, for living that and doing that. Thank you for sharing. You're welcome to stay on the call and you're welcome to ask more questions and chat and just kind of, brainstorm it. But I'm aware this is probably everybody's lunch break as well. So if you did want to go a bit earlier and go and grab yourself a cup of tea or a super quick sandwich or a bit of toast and soup or something, then please, we won't be offended if you have to go in the slightest. Otherwise, we will happily keep chatting.
Mm-hmm. I guess for me, Beth, is we've been talking about the ask. What do you think about thanking? Because I think sometimes people really struggle with thanking. So I know I wrote an article a couple of months ago about where I hold my hands up. I got the thanking wrong. What do you think we should be doing to thank our donors properly? Because they've taken all this time. They've obviously, theoretically, they've met with us. We made a lovely ask of them. They're really engaged, so much so that they're parting with, a significant sum of money. How should we be thanking them?
So generally, massive generalization, and I'm sure some of you will be like, I do it enough. We should be thanking people more, in my opinion. I think that sometimes we do one, maybe two thank you. So there's obviously the instant reaction thank you to whatever they say to the ask, right? Whether that's a yes or a no. And I would say that even if it's a no, there's also a thank you in the next follow-up, right? Unless that is no, and I never want to hear from you again, when obviously you listen to that. But right, if it's no, not now, you think about all the different reasons why people say no, not this amount, not this project, not now, not today, not with these people in the room, not without these people in the room. You've got some of that wrong. You thought you were right and you got some of it wrong, right? all of that is a follow-up. That is just a step towards your yes, right? So you say, thank you very much. I appreciate that feedback. Let's talk about next steps, right? So at your next step, you then reiterate, thank you so much for your response last time we met. So this is just a thank you to a no, right? And I don't think we do this. And this is how I would like to move forward. What, does this work for you, kind of thing, whatever that might be, right? But in terms of thank you for a yes, obviously you say thank you straight away. I would say you then ring whoever is next in your thanking ladder. You should have like a ladder. So if it's your director of fundraising, you then message or ring your director of fundraising and go, so-and-so's just said, yes, can you do a quick email? Here's the email address. And that person sends an instantaneous, unscripted, hey, Ivan, I've just heard that you've said you'll donate this much to that project, and I wanted to get on straight away and say thank you. We really appreciate it. It is only thanks to people like you that we can carry on our great work, right? And so that is within hours of the meeting finishing. And then if your thanking policy says that there's a formal letter, obviously there has to be a letter, right? But if your formal letter has to go from the chief exec, whatever the timeline is in getting that done, that probably is an urgent thank you as well. So I would say that for a big gift, you have a verbal thank you, an email thank you, and a letter thank you straight away. And then you think about when is your next touch point, because your thank you is your introduction and your segue into your menopause brain, not cultivation, the other one, stewardship.
Yep.
I totally went, sorry, everyone. Yeah, so your thank you is your segue into your stewardship, right? And so what's your next touch point? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? It's not going to be longer than those. Just hint, hint, hint. It's definitely not longer than those. It might be shorter. It depends what they've bought, how much, what the plan is, blah, 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 right? It's all very bespoke. And then at your next touch point, you say thank you again. I've got a client at the moment who do really nice handmade thank you cards from beneficiaries for different donors, and I think that's an awesome thing. If you do those, they need to be like readily available so that there's no you can't delay thanking someone for 2 weeks just because you want to make it homemade and authentic, right? It has to be quick. I worked at a children's hospice once, and one of my peers didn't want to wait for a child to make a card, so he faked it, and he literally went down to the art room and painted with his left hand. And at the time I thought it was hilarious, but actually that's awful. Please don't fake it. And I bet he's gone out for drinks with people and told that story many, many, many times about how he faked the thank you letter from the kids at the children's hospice. And it's just not cool. Like, if the donor ever hears that, they're going to go from, oh, isn't that amazing, to that's a lie. So definitely don't fake it.
Yeah.
But what do you think?
I think, well, on that point, integrity should be at the heart of everything we do. And I think you're right. I don't think we do thank our donors enough. And I think also I often see and come across where the donor is thanked and then forgotten about until somebody goes, oh, by the way, in our budgeting forecast and pipeline, we want to get another gift of them, and that a year later. And I think we slip on that massively. Again, I have thought something that keeps coming in and out of my head on thanking. I'm so sorry it's gone again. But I think it's a really key element of our work, and something that we do need to get right, and we don't do enough. And don't do it well, because that is what's come back to me when you think about it. And we've, if we've been in this position as major fundraisers, when that person says yes to giving that gift, they are, and I suspect, and they've said this at well-done interviews, they are as excited as we are about that yes. Like, that is a really personal thing, to be giving away that money to a charitable organisation. So we often run back to our workplace and be like, oh my goodness, I've just got this gift. They're also thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to transform lives by doing this. And actually, we want to keep that buzz, don't we? We want to make sure that the next interaction they have with us and subsequent ones are as full of that excitement and joy and passion, not just a flat thank you letter saying thanks,
and I think that all the stuff we talk about in terms of cultivation interaction, such as videos, totally come into play here. I tell you who and she's no longer with us, sadly, but I had this amazing colleague, Jane, when I worked at Battersea years ago. I was thinking about her yesterday, and she was such a creative person. She was in charge of corporate at Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, and she did such amazing thank yous. One day we were literally all in Battersea t-shirts spelling out thank you with our bodies as an entire fundraising team, while she stood in the chief exec's office, because they were all in porter cabins. It was before they built their fancy nice new office, but we're in this new porter cabin, and so there was an upstairs, and she went to the chief exec's office or someone like that, and she took this photo of us all, and we're talking like 30 fundraisers with nothing better to do, lying on the tarmac spelling out thank you with our bodies in Battersea. But it was I couldn't now tell. It's a long time ago. I couldn't now tell you who that was. And we had a partnership with a rugby club whose there was a rugby club whose emblem is cats, and they might have been tigers, but I think it was cats. And then another one, like, you can tell I'm not into rugby, right? And another one who had dogs. And we got a dog dressed in one of their t-shirts, and we got a cat dressed in another one of their t-shirts. Now, obviously, we actually made, like, we printed off a little thing and we took it home and ironed it on a little cat t-shirt. They don't make, or we weren't willing to pay, to be honest. But and there was like some friendly rivalry. They had been promoted to the same league as the other, and they were going to start playing each other. And so we did some like pretend dog versus cat stuff. And I think sometimes when you've got animals, it can be a bit easier because, like, you don't have to ask their consent. I'm going to be honest, like, it's a lot easier. And we used to invite people to, if they were into cats, we would invite them to an in-person thank you in the cattery and let them play with some kittens. And if they're into dogs, let them play with some puppies, you know. So, but they were really, the thank yous at Battersea, I will say, were the most interactive and thoughtful thank yous I've ever come across anywhere, and I really hope that's something they've kept long after Jane has left, and it's something I've kept from her as something I really took away and learned from. Like, make them fun, and exactly what you say, like, I think it was Macmillan back in the day, it might not have been, had a bell when in corporate partnership. So when we won a big corporate partnership, we would literally ring a bell and the whole floor would stop. 200 people would stop work and celebrate with us. And if you think that that's what we feel like, I think Hannah's making a really valid point. They feel that way on the other side, and we need to share some of our joy with them and give them ways that they can feel that joy as well. Because the more joy they feel, the more they will give more. Like, it's psychology. If they associate giving to your organisation with joy and love and a warm feeling, they'll want to do it more because everyone wants to have that warm feeling inside.
Yeah.
We are at time, everyone. I want to say thank you all so much. I also want to do a quick plug because Hannah is running a training course next week, which is key steps to kickstart your major donor program. So if that is something that is on your plate at the moment, or you just feel like a refresher, we've still got spaces available for that live webinar in 6 days' time. And Hannah's going to put a quick link in the chat for us. Thank you very much. But also, you're now all on our newsletter, so you will be getting the link to that on Monday in the newsletter as well, and hopefully you've got it in last week's newsletter as well. And hopefully we will see you again. We'll be doing these chats every month, and come when you can, don't when you can't. Submit questions for us to chat about even if you can't, and then come and listen to the video afterwards. We put all these up on YouTube so that people can watch back and see what they might have missed, but we're here to help you with as much as we can in our hour together, and I hope it's been helpful.
Thanks so much, everyone.